I thought it was just a text message, but my daughter's boyfriend changed everything. Sometimes life surprises us in ways we never thought possible. One ordinary evening, my phone buzzed with what seemed like a simple message. But as I opened it, I had no idea how much that text would stir something inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. I thought it was going to be routine, but instead it led me down a path of emotions, questions, and moments that left me breathless. What started as a simple conversation on a screen quickly became something that reached into my heart in ways I couldn't ignore. Before I begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? Which city are you in? I always love to know where everyone is listening to my stories. My name is Sophia. I'm 55. And this is how it all began. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing special. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you notice the ticking of the clock on the wall. My daughter had gone out with some friends after work, and I had settled into the couch with a blanket, a cup of tea, and my phone. That was when it buzzed. First, I didn't think much of it, probably a reminder. Maybe a friend checking in. But when I picked it up and saw the name on the screen, my eyebrows raised. Daniel, my daughter's boyfriend. We weren't strangers, of course. He'd been around for nearly a year now. Kind, polite, always offering to help carry groceries or fix something around the house. Daniel had this way about him, calm, attentive, and with a quiet charm that made people feel heard when they spoke. But still, I wasn't expecting a text from him. It was short and simple. Hey Sophia, are you awake? I hesitated for a moment, staring at the screen. It wasn't unusual for him to reach out about something practical. My daughter's plans, a ride, or maybe something he left at the house. So I typed back, yes, what's up? The 3 dots appeared. Those little blinking ellipses that somehow make the silence feel heavier. Then his message came. I just needed someone to talk to. Hope that's okay. I frowned a little, not out of annoyance but curiosity. It was late for a casual conversation, but something in his words felt vulnerable. Against my own better judgment, I typed back, of course. Is everything all right? That was how it began. The conversation at first seemed light. He mentioned work stress, how he felt like he wasn't doing enough, how sometimes he doubted himself despite everyone around him telling him he was on the right track. I could hear the weight behind his words, even through the tiny screen. He wasn't just venting. He was reaching out. As I leaned back on the couch, phone in hand, I felt something unexpected. I wasn't just reading his words. I was feeling them. They stirred something deep inside me, an echo of my own past struggles, my own late-night doubts when I was his age. And so I answered, not as my daughter's mother, not as a distant figure, but as a woman who had lived, who understood. I typed carefully, thoughtfully. I know exactly what you mean, Daniel. There were times in my life when I questioned everything too. But you're doing better than you think. Sometimes we just don't see it in ourselves. Minutes passed. Then came his reply. You always know how to say the right thing. That's why I feel comfortable talking to you. I felt a flutter in my chest I hadn't expected. It wasn't the kind of feeling I could easily name. It was more like being seen, being recognized in a way I hadn't felt in so long. The hours slipped away faster than I realized. We talked about everything. His dreams, my regrets, the way life can surprise you. The intimacy wasn't physical. It was something else, something almost more powerful. It was 2 souls finding common ground. A connection that neither of us had anticipated. I remember glancing at the clock, past midnight already. My tea had gone cold. The blanket slipping from my shoulders, but I barely noticed. His words drew me in. His honesty disarmed me. And there was something in the way he asked me questions, not superficial ones, but the kind that showed he genuinely wanted to know my thoughts, my feelings. When was the last time someone had asked me that? Really asked. And then came the message that made me pause. Sophia, I don't know why, but I feel closer to you than I've ever felt to anyone. You understand me in ways I can't explain. I stared at the screen, heart pounding in my chest. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what to write. Was this crossing a line? Was it just late-night emotions speaking louder than they should? Or was it something real, something neither of us had dared to put into words? Until now. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then with a deep breath I typed, I feel that too, Daniel, more than I expected. When I hit send, my heart raced. I set the phone down, leaning back into the couch, staring at the dim glow of the lamp in the corner of the room. Everything felt different in that moment. Charged, alive, confusing but undeniable. The next messages came slower, softer, almost hesitant, as though we were both aware that something had shifted. He told me he admired my strength, my wisdom, the way I saw life. And I told him he reminded me of the spark I once had, the courage I thought I'd lost. That night ended not with a confession, not with anything reckless, but with a lingering silence between us, the kind that carried more meaning than words could. When I finally set my phone down for good, it was nearly 2 that morning. I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with everything that had just unfolded. It was only a text message, but it changed everything. Morning arrived like a quiet apology, all soft light, and the scent of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. I had slept in bursts, the way you do after a too long conversation that leaves your mind humming. When I finally rose, the house felt familiar again. Creaking floorboards, the thin whistle from the kettle, the plant on the windowsill leaning toward the sun, as if nothing at all had happened. But my phone on the counter said otherwise. One unread message. Good morning, Sophia. Thank you for last night. Can we talk properly in person? That's all right. I stood there with one hand around the warm mug, feeling both the comfort and the tremor of that request. In person, the words weren't dangerous in themselves. They were practical, respectful even. Still, my heart took a careful step back as if to check the ground before walking on it. Public place, I typed. Midday, the little coffee shop on Maple. Are you free? He replied with a simple yes and a smile I could almost see. I chose a plain blouse and jeans, nothing that tried to tell a story I didn't intend to tell. I brushed my hair, checked my reflection and laughed at myself for checking twice. On the drive, the familiar streets slid by. Neighbors mowing lawns, a mail truck pausing at boxes like metronome ticks. Every ordinary thing was proof the world hadn't tilted beyond repair, no matter what a message might threaten to stir. The bell over the cafe door chimed when I walked in, and the roast hit me. The soft, nutty air of a place that knows how to take its time. He was already there, corner table by the window, hands around a mug, even though it was still too hot to drink. He stood when he saw me. There was a kindness to that, old-fashioned, steady. Hi, he said, voice lower than usual, as if he understood the room was too bright for anything careless. Hi, I returned, letting the word sit between us like a coaster. We ordered and sat. For a moment we talked about the safe things. Weather, work deadlines, the owner's new pastry that looked better than it tasted. Then the tide pulled us where it wanted to go. I felt strange after we stopped texting, he admitted, tracing the rim of his cup. Like I'd said too much and not enough. I don't want to make anything messy. Messy happens when people hide. I said. We're not hiding. He nodded and looked at me with a sincerity that was almost barefoot. Last night I felt seen. I don't feel that very often. I knew exactly what he meant. I knew because the word had laid across me like a hand on my shoulder long after the house went quiet. Seen not as somebody's mother or someone's coworker or the person who makes the holidays run like a train schedule, but as a person with a map of her own, still unspent in places. I don't want to hurt anyone, he added. Especially her. I don't either, I said. That's the line we hold. Whatever we say here lies in respect for her. He nodded again, grateful and relieved. A long breath left his chest. That sound alone gentled the room. We talked, not in the breathless way messages can tumble, but with the deliberate rhythm of two people choosing their steps. He told me about the pressure he put on himself, the way success felt like a treadmill he didn't get to turn off. He told me he hadn't expected to find comfort with me, that he was surprised by the way my words had landed. I told him about the years after my divorce, when the nights felt like hallways that never ended, about rebuilding, about learning how to enjoy my own company without apologizing for it. He laughed when I described my ritual of watering plants while classical radio softly argued with my ancient speakers. I laughed when he confessed he tried to bake sourdough and produce something that could have been registered as a blunt instrument. The laughter didn't break the tension. It softened it like kneading dough until it remembers it's meant to rise. At one point his hand slid halfway across the table, then paused. Not a reach exactly, more a question asked without words. My response was just as quiet. I laid my palm where it had started, still on my side of the table, and met his eyes. I want us to keep this honest, I said. And kind. I do too, he answered. More than anything, we let the space remain. It wasn't a wall. It was a boundary like the fence between neighbors who wave to each other over the top and borrow ladders when storms hit. It kept the garden safe. We walked afterward, cups in hand, along the little strip of shops that always forgets what year it is. He kept to my pace. We stopped at a window where a display of hand-painted mugs rested in the sun, each with a single word scripted across it. Patience, courage, mend, listen. I thought about how a life can be that simple and that difficult at the same time. Last night changed things for me, I said, finally keeping my voice even. But not in the way people might think. It made me notice how lonely I had let myself become. It made me remember I still want to be surprised by my own life. He listened carefully. Me too, he said. It made me want to show up better for myself, for her, for the people who matter. We both knew that included me and didn't need to be said aloud. I told him I planned to join the community corps that met on Thursdays, that I'd been rehearsing hymns quietly in the kitchen so the kettle wouldn't judge me. He grinned. He told me he was finally going to have a hard conversation with his manager about boundaries. We stood there side by side, the window throwing a rectangle of light at our feet like a small stage. Can I ask something hard? He said after a moment. You can. Do you think I crossed a line with the text? I took my time. The answer mattered. You reached out for help and you were respectful. I said. Feelings aren't lines. Behaviors are. We kept ours clean. He exhaled like I'd given him oxygen. Thank you. We turned back toward the parking lot and there the day made a choice for us. My daughter's car pulled in. She spotted us and waved happy. No suspicion in it. Just the kind of uncomplicated joy you can forget to be grateful for. She jogged over talking about work and a ridiculous email thread and a new bakery item I had already tried. We stood together for a few minutes. Her in the center, the sun catching in her hair, me and Daniel on either side. For a second I saw us from above, three figures at a crossroads where all the streets were honest ones. He kept his eyes soft and his voice steady. He asked about her afternoon plans. She teased him about his overtight schedule. I joined in the teasing because it was true and because laughter is a kind of blessing. When she left to pick up something down the block, Daniel looked at me, a question in his brow, one that asked for permission to carry this moment forward the right way. I answered with a small nod, a simple, careful yes to the better path. Later he mouthed, meaning the conversation he promised to have with her about stress and how to better care for their relationship. Not a confession, a commitment to presence. Then he went to meet her, and I watched them walk off, their shoulders brushing, ordinary and right. Back home the air felt different, not lighter or heavier, just true. I opened windows, let the day into the hallway, hummed a hymn badly on purpose. The plant on the sill looked happier, though I knew I was projecting. Still, joy can be contagious, even to things that don't breathe. I spent the afternoon pulling boxes from the closet, the ones that accumulate when a life has many seasons. Old sheet music, postcards from places that didn't live up to their brochures, a sweater that had survived 3 winters by stubbornness alone. At the bottom was a small wooden frame with a photo of me 20 years ago, laughing hair wild in the beach wind, not thinking about which direction life was supposed to go, just delighted it went anywhere at all. I set the photo on the dresser and let that woman join the room. My phone vibrated once around dusk. A message from my daughter. Daniel and I talked. Could talk. Thanks for being you, Mom. There was a heart emoji she rarely used, the digital equivalent of a hand squeeze. I smiled and felt something line up inside me, like a picture finally sitting straight in its frame. A minute later came another message, this one from him. Thank you. I told her about the work stress. I didn't mention our conversation. I hope that's okay. It felt like the right kind of privacy. I just wanted you to know I'm going to be present. Really present. I typed back. I'm glad. I'm proud of both of you. Take good care. Then I put the phone down and let the house be quiet on purpose. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It had furniture now, resolve, affection. A new respect for what I needed and what I could offer without losing myself. That week I joined the corps. I stood in the back row with the altos and missed a dozen entrances, but I kept showing up. There is a grace to standing beside people who are trying to make something beautiful with breath and time. There is an electricity in feeling your voice sit inside a cord that holds you up without swallowing you whole. I also started walking in the evenings, 2 blocks past the park and back, waving at the woman with the red terrier who trots like a metronome. I nodded at the man who cares for the community garden, his hat always a little crooked, his tomatoes an outrageous brag to the sun. I watched daylight lean into dusk, and let it teach me about transitions that don't announce themselves with fanfare, and still change a sky. A week later, my daughter brought Daniel for dinner. We ate in the backyard under a string of lights I'd finally gotten around to untangling. The table was loud with clatter and stories. At one point he took the trash out without being asked, and came back grinning because he'd startled the neighborhood cat into pretending it wasn't afraid. We cleared dishes together, and in the kitchen he said quietly, "I've been sleeping better." "Thank you for what?" I asked, rinsing a plate. "For reminding me that it's okay to feel a lot and still choose well." I looked up at him and nodded. "That's all any of us can do." He returned to the yard. I dried my hands and paused at the sink, staring into the dark window that showed me my own reflection. A woman of 55. Yes, also a woman who had remembered that her story was not over, and didn't need to be written on anyone else's pages to be worth reading. Later, after they left, I sat on the back steps with a light sweater over my shoulders and listened to the late summer insects tuning the night. I thought about the first text. The way it flashed on my screen like a pebble tossed into a still pond. The way the ripples had reached every shoreline without capsizing a single boat. Changed everything I'd said. It had not because it made me someone I wasn't, but because it invited me to be more deeply who I already am. Attentive, brave in small ways, protective of what matters, open to the kind of connection that doesn't require breaking what's good to feel what's true. Before bed, I set my foam face down on the nightstand. Not to turn away from the world but to turn toward my own. I closed my eyes with the certainty that morning would arrive like a quiet promise again, and I would meet it fully. I would sing off key and try again. I would water the plants and wipe the counter, and make a grocery list that included fresh berries because small sweetnesses are worth the trouble. This is what that text did. It asked me gently to wake up to choose honesty over hush, presence over performance, care over complication. To believe that being seen is not a danger when you also see yourself clearly. And if you're listening from a city I'll probably never visit, or a town that's one stoplight and a diner with a leaning pie case, know this. Your story can still turn on an ordinary hinge. A message, a conversation, a walk under lights you finally took the time to untangle. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be real. It only has to be yours, chosen with respect for yourself and the people you love. I turned off the lamp, the room softening around me. Somewhere in the house the old clock ticked on, reliable as breath. I let the sound count me down into sleep, not to end something, but to begin again, wiser, steadier, and more awake to the ordinary miracles waiting in the margins of every